Hello guys, today I'm finally leaking one of my favorite vintage watch shops. I've honestly gatekept this shop for way too long because people in the watch world are usually super secretive about where they buy their watches. But this store genuinely deserves more attention. And before we start, I'm trying to hit 150 subscribers this year, so if you enjoy this kind of watch content, it will genuinely mean a lot if you subscribed. I've personally bought around 4 watches from them and spent close to 6,000 euros. My Cartier tank comes from them, I bought my Rolex Datejust through them and also another Omega. So this isn't some random recommendation, I've actually bought from them multiple times. What makes this shop special is the variety. You can find vintage watches starting around 200 euros all the way up to several thousand euros. They mostly sell Seikos like King Seikos, Lotmatic and Grand Seikos, but they also regularly have Omega, Longines, Hamilton, Bulova, Tag Heuer, Cartier, Jaeger-LeCoultre and even Rolex. And the selection isn't just the typical boring vintage inventory you see everywhere else. Sure, they still have classic Rolex models, but most of the watches feel genuinely unique. It's not one of the shops where every listing looks like the same. A lot of the pieces have real character, which is exactly what I personally love about vintage watches. You can also see that in the numbers. They have already sold close to 1,100 watches, and honestly, some of the pieces they had are insane. I've seen Jaeger-LeCoultre Reversos, multiple Rolex models and Omega Speedmaster Professional, Cartier Balloon Bellew models, and even a Rolex Cellini that I still regret not buying because the price was pretty good. They also had an Omega Constellation with a beautiful natural patina, and finding watches like that for a fair price nowadays is genuinely difficult. One of the coolest things is that they also keep an archive of previously sold watches, so you can actually scroll through the older listing and see all the amazing watches that already passed through the shop. It also gives you a really good feeling for what kind of watches they usually source and the overall quality standard they have. Another huge advantage, especially for European buyers, is that the seller is based in Vietnam but also operates through Germany. The watches first get shipped to Germany and then sold out within Europe. So you avoid import taxes, and especially with vintage watches that can save a serious amount of money. The descriptions are also extremely detailed. They use high quality pictures where you can zoom in and properly inspect the watch. You see the movement, the bracelet, scratches, bracelet size, overall condition, basically everything you want to know before spending money on a vintage piece. Another massive advantage is that all their watches are serviced, and honestly, that also can save you a lot of headache. You might find an affordable vintage Omega somewhere else for 400 euro, but if the movement runs terribly and suddenly needs a full service, you can easily spend 100 more afterwards. So getting a properly serviced watch from the start makes a huge difference, especially if you're new to collecting. To show you what I mean, I want to give you 3 watches from the currently listing that I will personally buy right now. The first one is a Seiko Automatic from 1970 for around 230 euros. It has this beautiful brown dial only vintage watches seems to have. It's 36mm, the dial is completely original, nothing refinished, and honestly for the money it just looks incredible. This is exactly the kind of watch I'd recommend somebody to buy getting into watch collecting. The second pick is around the 600 euro range, an Omega Cosmic, and what I love about this is that it doesn't look like a typical Omega that everybody already owns. The dial has a few scratches, but honestly that's part of the charm because it feels honest and untouched. You also get the original bracelet, beautiful movement shots, and they clearly mention that the watch has already been serviced. And my last pick is around 1,600 euro. A Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Marine with an untouched dial. Yeah, it's definitely more expensive, but you're getting a gold case, even if it's a 10 karat. And the watch just has an insanely elegant vintage look that feels completely different from modern watches. It's one of those pieces that instantly stands out without trying too hard. So if you're trying to get into vintage watches and want a trustworthy shop with honest description, fair prices, serviced watches and genuinely cool pieces, this is honestly one of the best vintage watch shops I've personally used. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you left a like and subscribed. It genuinely helps the channel a lot. Bye bye.